All right. So where we left off, we should have our data here. So all we need to do now is loop through it, add it to the DOM. We're done with this part. And we can finally dive into Redux form really quick. At the very end of the day. We'll have to pick it up again next week because we're not going to get that far into it. All right. So first thing we'll do is we'll create variable to hold our list elements array. And then we'll say this dot props dot photos dot map. And then we'll say item and then in here we will return and do it on one line. We return an li and we'll say curly brackets item dot title. We'll give it a key equal to curly brackets item dot underscore ID. And finally, a class name equal to collection not dot dash item.
Why does it have to be item dot underscore ID?
Because that's just the way the data comes back from the server.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the property name is underscore ID. Remember, underscore is a valid character in a variable name. There's actually even a whole library called underscore that uses an underscore for its name, like jQuery uses a $sign.
On map, we didn't need to pass two things. No.
It takes actually three things get passed into that function, but you don't have to catch them all. The only one we care about is the item. And once we have our list elements, down below our p tag, we'll make a UL with a class name of collection. And in that UL, we'll say curly brackets, list elements. And you should now, in all theory, have your list show up on the screen. I'm going to check mine really quick, make sure it worked, and then I'll come right back to the code for anybody that still needs it. So you should have something that looks similar to that. Anybody need any help? Anybody still need a second? Everyone's good? All right, so we've displayed our list data. We have completed what this branch asked. I have a couple console logs I want to clear up. List.js line 11, which is this one. Just going to get rid of that. Everyone good? Last call.
Wait. Sorry, what did you just do?
I just deleted the console log.
Okay.
All right. If you got your list items displayed, we're good. We're done with this branch. This branch was called get list data. We're getting the list data. We're done here. Add, commit, push, and then we're going to merge it to master. So get status. Looks good. Get add. Get commit. Completed. Getting list data from server. And then finally get push origin. Get list data. And then we could use our handy little URL here. Copy that. Go to our browser. Update our GitHub URL. That should take us to a pull request to merge get list data into our master branch. Make sure you have a good message. Once you're sure all this is correct, get list data into master. Happy with your message. Go ahead and create the pull request. Do a quick review of the files changed. Looks legit. Go back to conversation. Merge pull request. Confirm merge.
I'm gonna wait till tomorrow. I'm already dark green.
And then delete branch. You know, that varies based on your total amount of commits, right?
Oh, really? Oh, crap.
Yep. So like your dark green is probably like 10.
No.
And then as you get more commits, it takes like 40 or 50 to get dark green.
That's better than 0, though.
Anything's better than 0. Yeah. All right, so once we have it all merged, we'll update locally. So switch to master, get checkout master, get pull origin master, pull the updated code. Now our local version of master is updated, and we'll delete get branch -d get list data. And as long as you get the message that it successfully deleted the branch, should be in good shape. Did I lose anybody?
We came to the master, then
Pull master.
pull, and then we delete.
Delete. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody having any issues? All good? All right. Now we'll create our next branch, which will be get checkout -b, and it will be add -item. Okay. Add item requires a form. This is where we'll get into Redux form. Everybody good? Ready to go? All right, I'm going to close a bunch of these for the moment, just to declutter. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to make add item its own page again, plus it's going to be its own component anyways. So inside of the components folder, we will create a new file called add_item.js. And then in add item, we will make a class component. So we'll say import React component from React. And class add item extends component. Render, return div with an h1 with the class of center. And we'll say add item. And then finally, export default.
Have you ever heard of the simple VX snippets extension?
Nope.
VS Code. I'll show you.
Julian's all about the extensions now.
Why does it like
So you
template
hit
out?
You hit IMRC, and it does your entire import React. You hit CC, and it creates your entire.
Yeah, I mean, I know those exist.
Oh,
Pre-ordered your guys' extension.
I imagine that is tedious, but
It does, but when you're learning it, you should be typing it down.
yeah.
I
I'm still not uninstalling it.
mean, if you feel you know it and you feel you can do it without the extension, then by all means, anything that saves time, that's why that stuff exists. And yeah, dude, when you're coding in React, you type this stuff out over and over and over again.
That's just the way we want it.
Everybody good with their add item? Feel good? All right, not hearing any protests. So what we'll do now is we'll jump back over to app.js. We will import our add item component. Oops, extra stuff in there. And then we'll make a route for it. Route path add dash item component equals curly brackets add item and close it out. In your browser to test it, you should be able to go to localhost 3000/add-item, and you should see your add item component and not your list. So localhost 3000/add-item should get that. Anybody have any trouble?
Can I look at your?
Need a second.
Oh, it's open. Okay.
I'll grab some water.
You installed it?
I do have, but I haven't used it. I installed them and they told me, but I just haven't, I played with it, but I was like, I need to learn it first.
Yeah, that's what it is too. I'm gonna like all out and I could get him.
I'm like, oh, it's
But I'm gonna save it for. I'm gonna keep that.
You can go back and do this.
For sure. I'm more of a basic person than that.
No, it's probably
Essential data.
I typed like IMR a couple times. I was like, that's
Nice.
dangerous. man. I was like,
It's
It
the
is nice.
CC.
Yeah, that's the one that really
because it automatically exports. So you type in the top and it auto-populates the bottom.
I'm good whenever it's done.
I guess I'm
What's
just
that?
doing it in case like in the employer like asks me about it, like I don't want to be like, oh fuck, I always type CCC. I feel like that's how my mind works. That's just me.
Let me show you.
Oh, it's just like
Let me
the.
show you something.
Right there.
Yeah, you can't type CC on a whiteboard, man. Oh, it's just like even the HTML skeleton. Like even dude, I get so used to using that stuff, and it's like you go to make it yourself, and you're like, oh shit.
Like, yeah,
exclamation tab.
Yeah.
Exclamation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a whiteboard, you just draw exclamation tab.
Whiteboard, you exclamation points.
You know what I mean.
Populate.
Come on, that's a body, man. Come on. All right, everybody's routing's working. Everyone good? All right. So last time we had little buttons that we used to navigate around. We'll use those again. This time we're gonna make a separate little component, so we can just use the component. So inside of components, we'll make yet another file. And we'll call it nav_button.js. We're just gonna go through this pretty quick because we're running out of time. We're gonna this is gonna be a functional component, so just import React from React, and then export default props, and then I'm just gonna do an implied return, so I'm gonna use parentheses, and then I'm gonna do div with the class of row. Rocks row. Inside of that, I'm going to do another div with a class of column, class of S12, and a class of right-align. Okay, that should build that. And then up at the top, we'll import curly brackets link from React router DOM. And then we're going to say link, oops, capital link. And then we'll do curly brackets. And we'll say props.text. And then we'll do inside the link, we'll say 2 equals curly brackets, props.to. And then in link, we will also add a class name equal to curly brackets. This time we use backticks. And we want them to always have a class of button. And then we'll say $, curly brackets. And then we'll say props.color. We'll do a ternary, so we'll say, or not a ternary, we'll say props.color or blue. So we'll allow them to pass in a color. If they don't pass in a color, the button will just be blue. But if they pass in a color, then it'll be whatever color they passed in. Okay? So we have a nice reusable component. We could pass in a couple props and make it look different and use it in multiple places.
We haven't done the color and two and text yet, right? On the prompts.
No, we haven't used it yet. No. Yeah, I just made those up right now.
Okay. Let's see.
Yep.
What are those?
Adam just made them up. That's right. I think one of the things that really gets people like making these components in the beginning is like, well, where do you get those names from? You make them up. It's like making a variable. We all good? Cool. So let's go back over to add item. At the top of add item, let's import nav button from this directory, nav button. And then right below our H1, we'll say nav button. And then we got to pass it the information for what it's going to do. So I'm going to say to, where do I want it to go to? I want it to go home when it's clicked. I want the text to say back to list. And then I'm going to leave the color as blue. I don't want to change the color. But if you wanted to change the color, you could do like color equals purple or whatever color you wanted it to be. I'll go ahead and do it as purple so you guys can see it work. All right, so I'll come back if you still need it. See, we have a nice purple button. It has the text that I specified, and if I click it, it should take me back home, and it does.
I'm getting link is not defined.
Probably forgot to import it at the top of that button. So you probably missed this part, maybe, inside of it?
But maybe I have
Oh, yeah, it is.
missed something before which one created that text.
No, this is where we created it.
Yep, that was it.
Where?
You have a typo or?
Should be.
Yeah, there's one.
Can you go to your list reducer?
Huh?
Your list reducer?
It's like in
Oh, yeah, prompts.
Prompts are reducers.
Okay.
We don't understand.
I don't have it on that page.
Or just like-
What's your question?
No, can you go to your reducer?
Yeah.
Your list reducer? What's at the top? You have import types.
Import React, component from React. And this is right there. Oh wait, no, sorry, it's import types.
What's the second one?
There is no second one.
You have a second one?
No, it's just one import. What's
I
your other import?
don't know. It's like weird. I'm
Here, they'll type this
wrote this wrong.
invalid.
Oh.
But I don't know when I did this. It didn't pick it up.
My list reducer is just import types from actions types, and then const default state, blah, 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 export default state, default state, etc.
So the only import you have is types on there?
Huh?
The only import you have on the list.
Is types.
What is going on?
In the index file, I have combined reducers and list reducer. So it
Yeah.
looks like that one's right.
What's going on?
Import.
Here.
What did I spell this wrong?
Oh, curly brackets wrong, please.
Oh. There we go.
I just sent you mine.
Oh, no. Yeah, I
You
got
gotta
it.
work with pictures.
I don't know how I had this weird second import. Show up until. And it was working fine the whole time. And then I
Anybody else?
Yeah.
It was like
Everybody's good? Everybody got their
some
button?
random word.
Everybody's got it working?
Okay.
It's impossible to figure out what's going on.
So module build failed.
don't know if you can see it. It says
Wait.
import create connection.
And then you have,
That's really
Like,
weird.
I don't know when I wrote that in there. I must have done it.
well, let's go.
See over here where it says compile?
Yeah, it just, I don't know.
These guys?
Yes.
Is this, so you have this div here,
Uh-huh.
correction, and then this one.
Uh-huh. You gotta go to add items.
Oh.
So forward slash.
It's there. Oh.
There you go. Anybody else? All good? All right, so now that we have our little button working, let's add it to our to-do list really quick. So go back to your list.js. Up at the top, we will import our nav button. So we'll say import nav button from this directory, nav button. And then right below my p tag, above my UL, I'm going to add nav button, close it out. I say to, as in where do I want it to go to? I want it to go to / add dash item. I want the text to be add item. And then if I want to change the color, I'm going to test mine to see if it is actually blue if I don't give it a color. See if my default coloring works. All right, I'm going to save it. All right, then we have our add item. Click it, takes it to add item. So we have this neat little reusable component now. I'm actually on add item. I'm going to take the color. I'm just going to leave all mine blue. Okay. So stuff like this where you're going to reuse stuff. This is the real power of React. We build it one time, make it configurable by passing some different pieces of information into it, and now we can just, any page we wanted to add a nav button at the top of, we can just slap it in there. We don't have to rebuild out all those divs and the link and all that stuff.
Can you come back into list? What I have to expect.
Everybody good? Everybody has buttons on both pages, right? All right. Now, finally. So, before when we built forms, we had to build state, we had to build an update function, so people typed and updated the state, right? Yeah, you guys remember that? Anybody?
Yes.
So nothing's changed in that regard. A form input or an input in general should still be handled through state, okay? Now that we're using Redux, if you want to, you can handle it through the Redux state. You can still handle it through local state. Doesn't matter. You can do it either way. It depends on what you're trying to do. But since we're using Redux, we could use this nice library called Redux Form that handles all the updating stuff for us. And it also has really nice error handling functionality. So it makes it really easy to handle any kind of errors. So as someone's typing in the input, you can actually give them feedback of like, hey, this is not valid. It's very cool. All right. So we don't even have, we have 7 minutes.
We get done.
Yeah, we can download it. So to use Redux form, you have to install Redux form. Okay? And that is exactly what it's called. So npm install -- save. We could set it up real quick too. There's a little bit of setup that goes with it.
Is there a reason for the -- What to say?
It just lets it know that it's some kind of modifier to the command you're doing.
Okay.
Every command line script uses, dashes or double dash or so.
Okay.
Just depends on how they wrote the bash script.
Gotcha.
All right, so npm install -- save, and we'll say redux - form. A Redux form. I've heard mixed reviews on Redux form. I personally use it. I really like it. In the beginning, I had some issues with it, but it was just my lack of understanding of how to use it more than it was Redux form's fault, which is usually the case with most things. And a couple people I've talked to that use it at their job, don't necessarily care for it, but I think the problem was the same. They just didn't fully know how to use it, so they didn't like it. I think once you learn how to use this all the way, even on a basic level, it's great. Where it gets a little troublesome is when you try and do extra stuff, and that's true with any library you install. The people that make npm packages, which anybody can make one, you can make an npm package and publish it, but they can't account for every situation. It's not possible. And usually when you're writing code, you're doing something different than what most other people are doing. That's why you're writing new code for it. So a lot of times you might be trying to do something that the package might not be able to do. But Redux form, once you actually really get into using it, it's extremely flexible in what you can do with it. So it does take a lot of time using it to get to that level. But for basic form functionality and error handling, it's pretty straightforward, and it's really awesome. I'm a huge fan of it, which is why I'm teaching it to you guys. Now, this is just an extra tool. It is not something you have to use. Okay? It's not like I'm using Redux, I have to use Redux form. Not at all. This is just a tool that you can use if you're using Redux. All right, it takes a quick bit of setup. Since it uses the Redux state, it has its own reducer. So we have to plug its reducer in with our other reducers. So we have to go to our reducers folder, index.js. All right, and then we have to import curly brackets reducer. Now, they literally call their reducer. I don't like that name. So I'm going to rename it as form reducer from Redux.
You can do that with anything.
Anything, yeah. Yeah, once again, you don't have to rename it. If you're happy with the name reducer, that's fine. I really don't like it. I think it's too generic. And this file does get bigger. As the example I showed you earlier, there was a ton of reducers in there. And if I just had one called reducer, it might get lost in the shuffle. Like, what the hell is this one? So it's nice to give it a good name that you could easily know what it's for. All right. And then we add a property called form and set it to reducer. Or not reducer, geez. Form reducer, sorry guys. Okay, so that plugs Redux Form's reducer into our Redux setup. And that's the setup. And that's it. Now it's going to work. Now, I mean, obviously, when we use it, there's more that goes along with it. But that's all the overall setup you have to do for it. It's just import its reducer, plug it into your root reducer, and then you're off to the races. Over an add item, we'll need to import whatever component, wherever you're building an actual form. There's two main things that you always need from Redux form, and is import field. Can anybody guess what a field probably is? Like an input, right? And that's exactly what it is. And then Redux form. Redux form. From Redux form. So Redux form, you'll notice, is lowercase. Redux form is like connect. It is a higher order component. So you can see when you start getting into more advanced React stuff, you start seeing these higher order components a lot. Higher order components are a really cool design pattern. Like I said, we will learn about them. But it's what the whole point of a higher order component is, to take some kind of functionality and add it to a component. Okay? So with connect, you're adding the Redux functionality to a component. With Redux form, you're adding the Redux form functionality to a component. Okay? We'll talk about that and much, much more next week. We'll pick up right where we left off, and we'll dive more into Redux form and all kinds of other fun Redux related things. We will be building a couple other projects together using Redux. This isn't going to be the last one. We're also not done with this one. We're going to build a little bit more on this. We're going to build one other app that deals with Redux, so we'll go through the whole setup process again. We'll use Redux form again. And we'll talk about user authentication on the front end. We'll talk about high order components. And we'll talk about middleware. Middleware. And that'll be next week. Anybody have any questions? If you're behind on your prototypes, keep chipping away at them. If you haven't done your guessing game, still keep chipping away at it. In Boutique, keep chipping away at it. If you're all caught up on that and you're feeling, Reaction is going okay for you, minus Redux. But if you're having a hard time with Redux, I'm sure everybody is, that's fine. There is a Redux prototype. So if you haven't done it already, you should do the Redux prototype. But beyond all that stuff, if all that stuff's all where it needs to be, feel free to work on your final project. You should still, even if you're behind on your prototypes and everything, catch all that stuff up as much as you can. And you should still probably spend some time on your final project. Your team's probably counting on you to do something over the weekend, I would imagine. With that said, though, once again, the learning is more important. If you don't learn how to do stuff, you're not going to be able to build the final project. So make sure you're practicing and still keeping up on your work, okay? Brings me back. All right, any questions, guys?
Maybe Andrew is going to do that.
Yeah, you can go ahead and add and commit. We're not done on this branch, but you can go ahead and add and commit just to save where we left off. Good call. All right, guys. Everybody have a good weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Not related.
Maybe.
No volume, too.